Welcome to our session today on writing cover letters. Over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to work our way through a standard cover letter and hopefully give you some helpful guidelines around how to write one. Most jobs these days will require a cover letter in addition to the resume, so it's really a skill you're going to need to develop if you're applying for both professional and part-time work. A good cover letter will take you a while to perfect, so one of my main pieces of advice is that you don't leave your cover letter to the last minute. It's often the first thing read by a recruiter. It's hugely important that you make a great first impression. Before we go into that, I'm just going to quickly plug our services here at CareerReady. We have career staff across all campuses. We offer assistance with careers and employment advice, which comes in the form of a 30-minute appointment, which can be a phone or a Zoom or a face-to-face appointment. Same goes with 15-minute appointments we offer for resumes, for cover letter reviews, where you can bring in your documents and we'll be happy to give you some feedback on those. Those services can be booked through Career Hub. And in addition, have a look at our careers page. You'll have access to the big interview. There'll be information on the events and workshops that we run across all campuses, in addition to some information on CareerReady Advantage, and I will touch on that again at the end of this set of slides. So your cover letter. What is your primary purpose of your cover letter? Well, there's actually a couple there. A lot of jobs ask for things like excellent communication skills, and your ability to communicate will really be assessed very easily with your cover letter. Is the letter clear and coherent, or is it jumbled? Is it rambling on and not really responding to the criteria? Have you followed the application or the job description instructions in regards to the information that you've given? The cover letter allows you to show the employer that you know who they are and what they do. It indicates to them the level of effort you've taken in putting the letter together and the research that you've done. I like to consider the cover letter as a bit of a gatekeeper. A bad cover letter really will not progress you any further, and employers will often not bother looking at your CV if your letter is poorly written or incomplete. An excellent cover letter will always be necessary if you want to be shortlisted for the interview. And ultimately, getting shortlisted for the interview is, is the main purpose of the cover letter. So, a couple of essentials that we need to look at here. Cover letter is a formal business letter, often requested by the employer. So, think about you've got one page to work with here. Generally, unless they specify otherwise, you will be sticking to that one-page rule. And across that, we look at 4 to 5 paragraphs in constructing your letter. We'll go through those in a minute. Keep your font and your font size consistent with your resume, so that the pair, while they sit together, they're a matching pair, but they're their own 2 standalone documents as well. And you can certainly summarise the key points from your resume, but what we don't want to see is you're just sort of referring to your resume or recommending the reader look at your resume for more details. This is not the case, not what they're looking for there. They want you to actually construct an argument, an independent argument on the cover letter without them needing to necessarily look at your resume. We write one cover letter per application. Now, that is a hard and fast rule these days. There's no sort of one-size-fits-all cover letter that you can send off to everyone. They don't work, and they're really obvious when we see those generic ones. They don't make a great first impression because they sort of suppose a lack of effort from your part, that you've sort of cut corners, and it's not something that you would really want people to think about you when you're going for a job with them. Have a look at what has the employer asked for. Think about specific skills or experience, qualifications, etc., and answer to those. This isn't the time to sort of randomly talk about other things that they haven't necessarily asked for, but that you might want to talk about. Really focus, give them what they've asked for. Don't assume they're going to read your resume. They might not. They might just look at your cover letter initially to see how have you articulated your skills and experience. So don't miss the opportunity to really sell yourself in that cover letter. My final point is a bit vague, but let's talk about this. It's about you, but it's not about you. It certainly is about you in terms of your skills and experience that you have to offer, but what it isn't is about what you'll gain getting this role. So I see a lot where people talk about, this will give me wonderful opportunities. This job will give me a starting point in my career. It's all about what it's going to give me. The angle should be about what you can bring to them, not what they're going to give to you. So how can you serve them? What do you have that you can offer to this employer, rather than how can they do you a favour and hire you? So really be mindful of, when you're reading it, what angle have you gone for? Is it about how they're going to help you or how you can help them? So before you even start writing your letter, I would recommend you sort of go into a bit of a period of reflection where you start thinking about, what is the job ad asking for and what do I have? Hopefully you have everything that they've asked for if you're going to be applying for the job, but start thinking about, what are my best examples? So they want problem solving, critical thinking, and communication skills. What have I got from my stash of experiences that would best support that skill set, and to show with an example? This is also the time to start thinking about researching the organisation that you're applying for. So companies want to see that you've invested some time in really getting to know who they are and what they do. So how can you do that before you've even started writing? For a starter, the obvious one is to have a look at their company website. A good company website will cover things like maybe the history of the organisation, the mission statement, might be about product lines they have, latest awards. Often in an About Us section, they might have latest things they're up to, a press room section, possibly with press releases or media mentions. Do they have a company blog that you can read? Do they have a newsletter you can sign up for? What are they posting on LinkedIn? Social media can actually be quite interesting to have a look at. What are current issues for them? What sort of things are they posting about? Do whatever you can to get some information about this organisation, even Googling them and going beyond their own web page. How are they seen in the industry, in the wider community? Find out whatever you can about them, because you're going to need that information down the track. So your letter should look like this. It is a formal business letter. It's not a style of writing we really use these days, but for cover letters, it's still kicking on. So we always want to personally address the letter whenever we can. You may get a name on a job ad of who to address it to, you may not. If there's a phone number and a no name, I would still ring and ask who you should address it to. But if you don't have a name, it's okay. We would just have Dear Sir/Madam. And I would recommend that over something like to whom it may concern, or to the manager, to the hiring manager, to the HR person. Just keep it Sir/Madam. But when we do have the name, we would have their name in full, and on the Dear line, it would just, we take out their first name. So as we see on the example here, we've got Ms. Joanna Smith, who is we're sending the letter to, and in the Dear line, it's Dear Ms. Smith. Okay, so we're taking out her first name and keeping it quite formal. We also would sign off with yours sincerely where we know a name. So when we're addressing it to an actual person, it would be yours sincerely. But if you had to go down that route of Dear Sir, Madam, it would be yours faithfully. So there's some old-fashioned letter writing rules there, but they still definitely apply when you're crafting your cover letter. So as I said before, we work with sort of 4 to 5 paragraphs roughly. So paragraph 1, what are you applying for and where did you hear about it? This is a really easy one. And this really should be limited to probably a sentence or 2. Because you've only got a page to work with, save your space for more interesting stuff later where you can talk about your skills and experience. So really, wish to apply for the role of data analyst at NAB as advertised on Seek. Something short and sweet really is all you're going to need for something in your first paragraph. Paragraph 2. Now, if you've done your homework, this is where you're going to show us your research. Why are you interested in applying for this job with this organisation? What do you know about them and how can you put that into your letter? So this one is always a tricky one to write, and something you're going to take a little while to work on. We don't want to see generic reasons in there. So if you're going to say things like, it looks like a challenging role or a dynamic company or a supportive environment, all of those really generic statements about why you want to work for a company don't really show me that you've done research into this particular organization, because a lot of those things could apply to anyone. So is it a key product or service that they're known for? Is it industry achievements or leadership within their industry? Is it something on their company culture that you can see via their blogs, or marketing approaches, or community involvement? Is it research? Is it publications they put out? Is it philanthropic stuff that they've been involved in that really aligns with your values? What is it? Give me something that's unique to that organization. This isn't the space to put, copy huge slabs of, from corporate websites where you're giving me the history of the organization. We don't need that. They already know their history. They don't need to see that either. But how can you impress them and show them you know who they are, you know what they do, and you know how together the two of you could work well? This can be a really, really good paragraph. When it's well written, they're really impressive to read, and this is one it's hugely important you take the time to get yourself organized with. So the next 1 to 2 paragraphs will be on how you meet the requirements of the job. So what skills and experience do you have? What have they asked for in the job ad? So, and how can you demonstrate that with evidence? So we never want to have things like, I have great communication skills. I have, I'm a great problem solver. That's your opinion. And you might be, but we don't need to know about that. So we want to see evidence for those claims. So we would start these paragraphs with things like, in my role at, during my time at, whatever, to just go straight into the example to give me an idea of this is what I've done. And this is, you've asked for critical thinking, communication skills, and problem solving. And these are my 3 examples I'm going to give you to show this is where I've developed that. And on to the last paragraph. This is just the closer. So once again, keep it short because your middle 3 paragraphs are the important ones there. So it might be things like you appreciate the opportunity to meet with them in the future. You might be referring to other documentation that you've attached, like your resume, might be a separate key selection criteria document that you've attached. It might even be things like, that you have a current working with children's check or a full driver's license. Sometimes those things are listed on the job ad as a requirement. Now, they obviously don't need their own individual example, and it's just you acknowledging that you have those things that they've asked for. So that could certainly be something else that you could mention in that sort of final paragraph. So in summary, show me, don't tell me. Hugely important. So give me evidence. As I said, we're not here for your opinion. You might be a wonderful problem solver, but that's not going to cut it. You need to give me an example. The other thing I don't need you to tell me is that you would be the ideal candidate for the role. We see that a lot in letters that get reviewed at CareerReady. People feel the need to sort of include their own assessment. I would be the perfect person for this position. I think you will find me well suited for the role. Those kind of claims, look, you may well be perfectly suited, but you don't need to mention it. Once again, they know that you're applying for the role and they don't really need your opinion and your assessment against the other applicants. So just leave that space for something more interesting. You need to write concisely. If you're a bit of a waffler, this may be something that you need to do a few drafts to get it right, because you do only have that 1 page. So think about all the things you need to cover off on and focus just your time on those rather than on other things. Check your spelling and grammar. It's non-negotiable. There's no reason why you should submit a poorly worded or a cover letter full of typos. That creates an instant bad first impression, and most of the time it won't get you shortlisted. So check through those. thoroughly before you submit anything. As I said earlier, a new letter for every job. You cannot do a generic cover letter. You cannot show me research into the organisation and examples of how you've met different criteria using a generic cover letter. It's just never going to be suitable. So don't cut that corner and just put the time aside for a new letter for every job. And really, have you focused on what the employer has asked for? Or have you given me some other information that I didn't particularly need? Go back and have a look at that job ad. If they've asked for 5 criteria in the ad, there should be all 5 should be covered off on that cover letter. And if they're not, you need to go back and rework it. Just quickly before we finish up today, I'm going to quickly mention CareerReady Advantage. So this is an employability award program that we're running at La Trobe, and we developed this in consultation with employers who maybe told us things that they were looking for in graduates, and from that we put a series of a program together where students can develop their skills even further and maybe give them a bit of an edge when they finish up here. So we have a mixture of professional learning modules, some practical experience components, and some important career portfolio pieces like writing a cover letter that you'll be able to use when you graduate from La Trobe. If you're interested in that, it is all on the LMS, and it's something we would really encourage you to think about to give you just that edge over possibly other students. You know, there's a lot of you graduating all at once, so this will help make sure that you possibly stand out because you've had a range of different experiences that you've done while you've been studying. And just as an example today, just by listening to this webinar, this is going to count as one activity in a professional learning, as a professional learning module, which will automatically be added to your record. And even submitting your cover letter, once you've written one after today, that will be a career portfolio piece. So you've certainly got some options there. You'll be well on your way towards the award if you're interested in going forward with that. So in summary, that's it for me. I hope this has been useful to you in understanding what needs to be included, but also what needs to be omitted in a cover letter. As a next step, you're very welcome to visit the careers team on your campus and get some feedback on your own letter. If you do so, just bring in the job ad as well so we can assess the 2 documents together and ensure that you've met the criteria of the job ad in your letter. But for now, thank you for listening to this webinar on cover letters.